today with Ayman Ismail, the chairman of AI Capital and the chairman of the UN Global Compact in Egypt and the chairman of the National Cinema Holding Company. But we've got a lot to discuss and we're so happy to have you with us.
Pleasure.
Let's start from the beginning. We are featuring you today as one of Egypt's success stories. Let us know a little bit about your journey to success. How did it all start?
I started my career with Procter & Gamble. P&G is cool. It has its own uniqueness because it's a promotion from within companies. They don't hire managers. You actually have to start from the very first beginning and climb up in your career. I started in sales, which was very, very different. It was a cornerstone that built my personality and my career. But after 5 years in sales, I was the first one that introduced detergent to the vegetables and fruit stores. It was very interesting because I got to know a lot of people and I got to know different type of traders in Egypt and how they operate. But then after 5 years, I wanted to switch to marketing. And being P&G, I had to start all over again and start again as an assistant brand manager in marketing. And that time I moved to Geneva. Then I moved to Brussels, where I was a part of the new business development for P&G. You're working in a large company, but I'm working on the new brands. It's a new territory that not a lot of people know about in the company. So it gives me a lot of freedom. And this is where I launched Swiffer, which is now a multi-billion-dollar business in Europe and North America. I was asked to move to the US to head the marketing for our oral care business. And P&G in the US is defined as the producer of Tide, Crest, and Pampers in that order. So Crest is a very important brand.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. All of a sudden, now I'm working on a big brand where everybody know the brand inside out and have a lot of attention and emotional connection to the brand, which makes it a little bit difficult when you're operating in a corporate world. We took very innovative approach and we decided that we want to reposition Crest from a healthcare brand to a beauty care brand. And the angle that we took, we brought innovation. We launched a new product called Crest White Strips, which is almost equivalent to what you get from the dentist. And it was a very different product for P&G because actually it was very expensive. It was at $50. At that time, it was the most expensive P&G product on the shelf. And we were able to reposition the brand from a healthcare to a beauty care because nothing beats an amazing smile. And a smile is always the most beautiful feature in anybody's face. And luckily, we were able to regain the leadership. It wasn't easy. Then after that, I was part of the team that led the Gillette acquisition and I did the strategy for how do we bring the two companies together. At that time, I decided to leave for a family reason because actually when I left Egypt, my daughter was like 6 months old and at that time she was 16 and I was so worried that she would have no anchor to home. I decided to leave and in between I went and I did my Harvard. It was an amazing learning. Then I joined PepsiCo after that as the president for North Africa.
Tell us about the move to Pepsi and you're leading the charge. How was that transition for you?
Pepsi and P&G, totally different animals. As I was saying, P&G is more of a school, is more of value-based operation, promotion from within. PepsiCo is the exact opposite.
Wow.
It's like very fast business, lots of people coming from different backgrounds, which adds a lot to the challenge of the value of the company, how you bring that together, and more of cowboy type of environment rather than a very, very structured environment. It was a major culture challenge. The business is much simpler. P&G product has a lot of chemistry into it, lots of innovation, etc. And PepsiCo, packaging innovation. One of the key things that I was pushing at the time I was with PepsiCo, I was advocating that we get into the dairy business. And this is how we got into the JV with Al Marai, which was very, very interesting. An amazing learning experience.
And then afterwards, is that when you transitioned into the family business?
Yeah, afterwards, PepsiCo asked me to go to Dubai as VP for South Asia, Middle East and Africa, which was again a very, very interesting assignment. So I left the family here, I was actually commuting. But then after a while, we had the family business, was founded by my younger brother. I was shareholder, advisor into that business. The business was growing, so he kept asking me, it's time to come and join the business, which was not an easy decision.
You preferred the corporate world?
Corporate world has its own advantage. It's the best place to learn. Family business is more a place where you would do your own dream. But it comes with a challenge, mixing the relationship of the family with the business is not an easy task. One of the best advices, you need to keep yourself busy away from the business.
Away from the family business.
Away from the family business. So you're coming from a place that's very, very well organized. So it's like a puzzle. You know where each part fits. When you go to your family business, it's not all put together, and you will be trying to put it all together. But you see the total picture. The rest of the people did not have the luxury to work in a multinational to see what you see. You need to make sure that you gauge your speed. You don't want to move at a speed where they cannot catch up with you. What you want to do is you actually take time away to slow yourself on the family business. One of the key characteristics of the leader, you don't stretch the organization too much, because otherwise you become a leader of yourself, not a leader of the rest of the team. To keep myself busy, that's how I started to get into some work with the government. I worked at that time with Dr. Ashraf Al-Arabi, who's the Minister of Planning, as the team leader for the Egypt Vision 2030. Got me to learn what's going on in the country. So it was really, really very, very beneficial. And again, it took my attention away from the business. So it created that balance.
And at that time, was the family business primarily a real estate business? Is that where you developed this beautiful Mountain View project?
Yeah. Amr, my brother, he's an extremely visionary and innovative character. When I came in, everybody had approached Amr with a good idea. He created a company for him. Companies for real estate, companies for landscaping, companies for furniture, companies for construction, for architect, for everything. It was challenging. How do you bring everybody together, and how do you change from an entrepreneurial type of environment, which is amazing at the beginning, but as you scale up, that cannot work. And it took some time, thankfully, and my team was an amazing guys. I mean, all of them were really, really good. Some of them are leading the business right now. We're a sponge. A lot of them learned what we're trying to change. The one thing that I would say that I am proud of is that I have focused on the human part, not only the business side. That's one of the areas that we really pioneered in. If you ask in the market, DMG is known for being a school, for being a place where people want to work in. We were the first local company to be recognized as a top employer, only multinational company, and it took a lot of work.
Yes, I heard you had something called the happiness concept.
And when people talk to me about that, I always say that's kind of the top of the pyramids. You can't run to happiness quickly. For us to reach that stage of happy employee and happy customers, it took a lot of build-up. First, we were working on creating the culture and the value of the place. And then we made sure that people understand what are our values. One of our values is family bond. And that's very, very different than any multinational company or any other company, in fact. And rather than pushing that away, we said, no, we want to actually use that as an asset.
Yeah.
So how do we drive that? And we balance that by values like integrity, innovation, and passion for growth. So all those, it was a blend of a multinational culture with a family culture. And that created a very, very unique environment. Then we started to work on clarity. When you come to an entrepreneurial landscape, people tend to want to do everything, and people tend to be too agile. And agility is an amazing skill, but too much agility is chaotic.
Yeah.
Now we need to create that balance. We started to work on clarity. So what would be your role? What would be the scope of your role? What should each company do and not do? And that took some time. And then the layer that came after that as we were growing is a layer that we call trust. As you grow in an organization and as you bring a lot of people in, this is when politics start to creep into the organization. We were among the first companies to introduce a trust meter. All of our managers were measured on a trust meter. We started by the trust meter as a way to develop you, and then moved as a mechanism to evaluate whether you're ready for a promotion or not. And with the trust meter, we added the manager quality. People don't leave organization, people leave managers.
Interesting.
We allowed the subordinates to evaluate their managers, and we had like 4 key questions. My manager gives me clear goals and objectives, cares about my personal development, help me grow, and my manager know me and know my interest. You want to know your people. You want to know how to make them fulfill what they want to fulfill, and that's how you can grow them. And then we were ready to go into the happiness. A lot of people talk about the happiness as a gimmick. In our case, it wasn't. For us to bring the happiness into the equation, we went to the people who did that best, which is Zappos. They spin off part of their company, part of their HR, to create a company called Delivering Happiness. And they were studying the science of happiness at workplace. We brought those people, and then we started to work with them, and we were actually the first in the Middle East. And it was a journey. I was insisting that we have to start with our own employees, that we don't go to the customer, because if you don't have happy employee, it's going to be very hard to have customers. And we went to apply for the top employer, and we were audited. First audit we didn't make it, then we worked on the feedback that we got from the audit for a couple of years, and then we were recognized as a top employer in 2015.
Amazing. Given that until early this year, you were the chairman of Mountain View, and from what I know, Mountain View has been doing extremely well. Tell us what your thoughts on the real estate sector in Egypt.
Real estate continued to be one of the key drivers of the economy in Egypt. It was all the government initiative in building new cities, which is part of Egypt Vision 2030, that we need to broaden our urbanization. To give you the number to bring perspective to that, the pharaohs used to live on 3% of Egypt land, and there were around 3 million pharaohs. 7,000 years or 7,000 some years after, we were living only on 7%, and we are 100 million. We have not done enough urbanization. We have not utilized our land at its best, and part of the vision that we moved from the 7% to 14 all the way up to mid-20s. Hence all the new cities, all the new projects. People say, like, why are we doing this? No, we need to do that, because otherwise, how can we absorb all the growth in our population, and how can we leverage all the resources that we have? Egypt is very rich country, and our resources are in our land, and we need to expand to be able to utilize those resources.
And from what I understand, the demand is still way bigger than the supply.
It depends on which category you are referring. The real estate over the last 10 years has seen a real dramatic change. If you go back to 70s and the 80s, we have not been developing enough land or developing enough housing. And as a result, that created a huge gap on the supply and demand. In the early 2000s, the country started to offer land, but you would say from the 2000 to 2005, it was land offered only for few developers.
Yeah.
And the time, the reflection point of building different type of cities, the New Cairo or the October, etc., which is more compound, different than what we used to have before. Yeah. And some major developer came into the market. Then after that, we started to offer land to more people. And the real estate is a very diversified type. There's no monopoly. 10 developer will not account for more than 10% of the total business. Wow. It's a very diversified type of business. But the demand have been piling up, but also the supply have been ramping up very fast. We are at a balance point. Now, what the government have done over the last few years in dealing with low-income housing have also bridged the gap on the lower end. But still, at the lower end, we still have a gap on the supply and demand.
Due to the challenges in the Egyptian economy, a lot of people see real estate as a better investment than putting your money in a bank.
Yeah, and it will always remain like that. It's a safe haven. We have in Egypt, in terms of real estate model, is very unique. The start is basically the developer, the end is the consumer. We've eliminated a lot of players in the middle, among them the banks. In a normal model, the developer will borrow money from the bank to be able to finance the project, and then the end user would borrow money from the bank to finance the purchase. And they would pay interest here and they would pay interest here. And in a high interest environment like Egypt, that's very expensive. In our case, the developer uses the end user as the funding. We borrow from the consumer, and as a result, we don't make them pay for the interest rate. That actually allowed Egypt to have a very efficient system versus all the other markets, especially with our high interest rates.
Yeah. And less defaulting, because you're only going to buy if you actually have the money.
People will continue to pay because they know that the cost of not paying is extremely high. And the cost here is that you would lose the unit. and you will lose all the interest that you would have made on your money if you would have invested the money somewhere else. The system creates a guard for itself. Is it good for the end users? Absolutely, because where else can you buy a product and fix the product price against all the inflation, against all the exchange rate crisis that we're going through? The tricky thing for the end user right now, it's not easy to resell as it used to be. But still you're making decent return, and it's above the return that you would get if you would put your money in the bank. From a developer point of view, most of the developers are challenged. So with all the pressure and with all the inflation that happened, they had to be pushed into longer payment terms. And that breaks the model. Because the end user is the finance. I would build over 4 years, so I need to get the money over 4 years to be able to match that. Now with 10 years, it creates a funding gap for the developer.
Only the bigger developers can survive this.
Yes and no, because the whole game here, Yasmine, is the ability of developer to manage the money and manage his procurement. His ability to procure faster and lock the prices faster, and also his ability to phase the project. Maybe in the first phase of the project, you will not make money. You could actually lose money, but probably toward the end phase of the project, you will start to recoup some of your losses and make the profitability.
And we've seen now in this phase that a lot of real estate developers are focusing on foreign investors. Is that something that you've seen is a case too?
There's actually a drive to encourage exporting real estate. Bringing foreign currency to the equation, it would be an amazing help.
So let's get to your current role.
Okay.
Because now you're running the Family Business Investment Fund, which I know is doing a lot of exciting stuff. So tell us a little bit about that.
I was chairing Endeavor in Egypt, and during the time, I've seen a lot of startups and I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs. I got so passionate about young entrepreneurs, and I believe that's the future. The idea of starting that fund is support many of those startups and entrepreneurs, and also diversify the business.
That's great. And are you looking at all different sectors?
Yes. We choose based on the entrepreneur capability and ability to grow and how exciting his idea is. We're not an angel fund. We don't invest in ideas. We invest in proven concepts. I want to see the concept have already materialized, took place. He cracked the model.
Okay, that's exciting. Let's go to your other current role, chairing the UN Global Compact. How are you juggling all these hats?
They don't all come together. I left Endeavor, then I felt that UN Global Compact is the natural development of that, because UN Global Compact is focusing in larger company, and really it's the UN arm to guide, train and foster the private sector toward the 22 principles of the UN.
Well, let's get to your last hat, which as the chairman of the National Cinema Holding Company, which seems like a completely different world, but a really exciting one from what I hear.
It is, and it goes to my passion. I'm a big fan of movies, I'm a big fan of cinemas and art in general. This company owns all the assets. If you go back to the 60s and 50s and you compare the Egyptian movies to any of the Hollywood movies, we would win in many aspects. I don't think at that time anybody have produced a movie as big, as bold, as Salah ad-Din. But we've lost that. And what we lost is the super soft power of Egypt. And that's something big. We used to dominate the region by our movies. We used to set a set of values for the whole Egyptian through our movies. That's fundamentally dangerous that we lose that power. The leadership of the country are eager to bring that back. This company actually owns the big three studios, Studio Masr, Studio Galal, Studio Al-Ahram, and this is where most of the Egyptian movies were produced. We own more than 72 cinemas across the nation and over 1,600 of the old Egyptian movies. But unfortunately, this company is losing money today. And that's mind-boggling. How would you have all those assets and lose money? And that's actually the main thing that we're trying to do right now.
Let's get to now the Enigma questionnaire, but it will give you an insight into your personality a little bit. Describe yourself in 5 words.
I am courageous, impatient,
Okay.
bold, and I love people. I love working with people.
Who is your greatest role model?
Sayyidina Omar. What I like about Sayyidina Omar is how decisive he is and how logical he is.
What do you do to unwind in your free time?
I love to build my own music list. I have for every set of moods a music list.
If there was a book written about you, what would you like the title of your biography to be?
Never give up.
What is your proudest moment?
When I made the decision to leave the US and come back to Egypt for family.
What makes you laugh?
All the Egyptian movies always make me laugh.
What's one thing you wish people would know about you?
That I'm very emotional.
That's a great quality. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
This has been such a pleasure, and we're really excited and waiting to see what you're going to do next.
Thank you. Same here, and Lily, thank you for taking the time. I'm proud.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.